Hey Reluctant Preppers, you could have been watching this video the moment it came out
by going to HealingYourself.Life and subscribing to our new sister channel, Healing Yourself. See you there. Hey Reluctant Preppers, if you haven't heard, we've already started our monthly 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle thank you gift to one active Patreon subscriber each month, signed by your host, Dunnigan Kaiser. And you don't want to miss out on that.
Please help us grow by subscribing today at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.
HealingYourself.Life provides information for awareness, educational, and support purposes only and does not diagnose or prescribe treatment for any medical condition. Viewers are encouraged to do their own due diligence and consult with their own medical caregivers before making personal treatment decisions. Welcome back to HealingYourself.Life. We are once again with our off-grid doctor in family practice in Northwest Ohio, Dr. Jay Nielsen MD. He also runs a survival compound and a Christian mission in the country of Haiti. He's here to talk with us today about the treatment of diabetes and its complications. Dr. Nielsen, once again, thank you for joining us on HealingYourself.Life.
Thank you. Good to be here. Diabetes is an interesting disease because it is, I have the statistics in one of these when I get to it. It is $611 billion in expenses in the United States today, according to the American Diabetic Association.
I'm guessing that's been on the increase.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it is. Well, you know, the interesting thing is they've had to change the seats at Yankee Stadium 3 times in the last 50 years, all over width.
I know where they're going. The width is going. It's going onto less width on the airplanes. That's the trade-off.
Yeah, that's right.
There's balance in the universe.
So, you know, and so the primary thing is that we have. This is one of those classic situations in which they want you to be sick because there's just so much money involved, and so the disinformation is so thick. And I'm going to barely touch on complications and drugs and etc. And I really want to get people to understand what you aren't being told. If you want to know all that stuff about diabetes that's true, go read Wikipedia. I got good information off of Wikipedia. This is took this down today. This was the American Diabetic Association, and not a single mention in treatment about lowering your carbs.
Dietary changes.
No, dietary changes. It just said you just need to watch what you eat, okay? I wanted to go back and spend a little bit of time today kind of looking at those issues. And again, this came off of Wikipedia and was good stuff. And it had the history in it. And you can look it up. I won't hold it up there. But when they got to carbohydrates, they said the American Diabetes Association in 1994 recommended 60 to 70% of your caloric intake in diabetes should be carbohydrates. Okay? Sucrose-containing foods can be substituted for other carbohydrates in the meal plan. Sucrose does not increase glycemia, and it's a starch. And it is not recommended to use fructose as a sweetener because it can affect your lipids. You can't make this stuff up. That's just incredible. It's important to remember that Banting and Best won the Nobel Prize, and everybody learned in 5th grade they invented insulin. And indeed, that did result in their inventing insulin, but not at a level it was commercially available. What they won the Nobel Prize for was they took the pancreas out of dogs, and then they didn't give them any carbohydrates, and they didn't have diabetes. But the minute you gave them carbohydrates, they developed diabetes, and of course, they had no treatment, and they died. Okay? And so what Banting and Best were famous for was proving that not giving carbohydrates to diabetics is a really good idea. That's where we started. This whole story starts with that statement, and yet we're not telling people that today.
Just before we go any further, for those who may want a real basic understanding of what diabetes is at a functional level, what is it?
I'm going to get there. Give me 3-4 pages.
All right.
Okay. But first, I'm going to kind of set the stage for where we're going because, like I said, it's out there. And this is probably the kind of things you should be reading. This was out of Nutrition News and says, lose the carbs. Okay. Here's the problem. Okay. The problem is that as you're bringing glucose in and firing off insulin on an insulin receptor, your sugar should be metabolized and should make a small byproduct of pyruvate, and it should go over and make fats, and it should store glycogen. That's normal physiology. Okay? That's how the body really works.
So if we slow down here just for us in the kindergarten seats, glucose would be any sugar.
The broken down form of all carbohydrates.
All carbohydrates.
And fats, by the way, but so slowly broken down they don't release insulin.
So primarily things that are either have sugar in them or have grains and starches, things like that.
Right.
And then this is in your blood. It comes out of your digestive system into your bloodstream.
And this is a cell wall.
And now in order to get out of the bloodstream and into feeding the cells, insulin is like a gatekeeper or something. It's a pump that gets...
Well, insulin is the driver. Insulin is what tells the insulin receptor to open up the pump for glucose.
Okay, so it's like something that turns the valve and gets it...
Right. And as a result of that, then you store it in your liver, you store it as fat, and you get breakdown products.
The reason that people who are diabetic might take insulin when they think they have too high of blood sugar is so that the cells will be turned on to pull the sugar out of the bloodstream. And
right, except for the problem is the insulin receptor is now sensitized and refractory, so you keep giving more and more insulin, which is why you meet diabetics that are on 500 units of insulin. Okay? This is what really happens in diabetes. Okay? And that is that glucose is busy out there running the Krebs cycle and making energy, NADH2, and when you get too much of it, it turns into sorbitol, the sugar in velaments that gives you diarrhea, and then it continues to try and metabolize that, and then it turns into fructose, which then it can't deal with appropriately, so then it makes toxic sugars. Okay? And that's what causes your diabetic complications.
Inside your body, it can create sorbitol and fructose?
Well, if you watch over here, sorbitol gets into your tissue and it slowly builds up. Well, then all of a sudden you control your sugar, and now the sorbitol is osmotic and pulls water in, and when you start to correct the sugar in diabetics, they can't see because their lens swells up. Well, that's why they get cataracts. And they do the same thing in their brain, and they can't think, etc. You don't want all of your tissue to be saturated with sorbitol. And so the basic concept is sugar is toxic to the human body. It's a very basic concept. And we have to now go over and get into that whole eating for your blood type thing. That book had it exactly backwards. Their conclusion was, tell me your blood type, and I'll tell you what you ought to eat. I say, tell me who you are genetically, and I'll tell you your blood type, and I'll also tell you what you ought to eat. The two aren't related other than the fact that they have the commonality. As a Northern European, Anglo-Saxon Protestant, WASP, okay, I am the classic Paleolithic man, okay? My ancestors grew up looking up at a 50,000 foot high ice shelf, and they lived within 50 miles of that as that retreated, okay? And they hibernated. And we're going to go back to this biochemistry later, but because that was their diet, when they came out of their semi-hibernation in the spring, what food did they have? Nothing but meat. And it was lean because it had just hibernated too. Okay? And then as the season went on, the animals developed fat, and you started seeing some greens, and then you saw some non-ripe fruit, and then you saw ripe fruit, and then you saw nuts and seed heads. And because those showed up in the late fall, they had two features about them that were important. One, the Paleolithic man didn't know how to jerk meat, and he didn't know how to make a clay pot and store oil, but he did know how to store seeds and grains in a woven basket. So as a result, he went into his cave to semi-hibernate, eating nothing but grains. So grains in Northern European, Anglo-Saxons, type O, okay, when you give them carbohydrates, they make insulin, and insulin makes you turn muscle into fat, sugar into fat, slow down your brain, make you depressed, make you cold, make you gain weight, take your cholesterol up, and make you sleep. during the day, not at night. Okay? Hibernation. Okay? And so we have an entire population called Americans who are all wandering around in hibernation all day. And this is the reason why when you put people on a low-carb diet, on day 11 they go, wow, my brain lit up, I can think, and my pain went away, because insulin is the most inflammatory hormone in the human body. Okay? So that whole eating for your type thing works because when you go from that, you head over to the Mediterranean diet for Mediterranean people. And meanwhile, the Chinese and the Japanese and all of the blacks can all eat rice and corn because it's been in their diet for thousands of years. And so they have a whole different set of disease parameters for what they're looking for good food. Okay? We're all worried about the opioid crisis. I'm worried about the sugar crisis, good old sucrose. Okay? It is so addicting to the brain. Okay? Amazingly addicting, massive withdrawal. And how is it mediated? Through insulin. Insulin, when it goes up, tells the brain, you need to give me sugar. I need sugar to pump. And so once you quit eating sugar, you still have insulin, so it's telling you, you got to get me sugar, and you're stuck in a loop. Okay? Lots of people have wrote really good books on this. This one's a little off bubble, but you can look this guy up. I think this is on the web for free now. Okay? And it's Patrick Quillen, PhD, registered dietitian, and at American Eagle Nutrition, and it's How to Reverse Diabetes. And it was the first thing I ever read about managing diabetes with carbs. Really liked it. Since then, everybody's written these books. Don Colbert's book is a good book. And so for diabetics who want to stop being diabetic, tell people all the time when they come into me and their hemoglobin A1C is 7.5 at their new patient visit, and I tell them, we need to have an understanding. I'm going to be clear right here. I don't manage diabetes. I only cure it. If you want managed, go find a diabetologist, do the wrong diet, inject yourself, take your pills, do all those things that are going to make you get your legs cut off and go blind. That ain't on my shift. I don't do that. You're going to do what I say, and you're going to get better, or you're going to get... So I'm going to say diabetes being managed by somebody else in my chart, and I'll quit talking to you about it. I'm not going to harp on you. You don't want to fix it? Fine. Just telling you today. That's my management. I don't have any diabetics in my practice that I'm managing. I either fixed them, or I told them, go to the diabetologist. Okay? Here's Mediterranean diet. Good article on the fact that the Mediterranean diet has another place other than the complete carb elimination diet. Okay? These are things that came out of my family practice journals. Low carb diet trumps caloric restriction. Okay? Period. In diabetes. Okay? They did a big study, evidence-based stuff. Evidence-based is always, the insurance company wants you to do this, okay? Because it's going to lower your premiums.
I see.
It's not really good health care. They're trying to tell the doctor how to practice. And they went out and tried to do this study on diabetes and wanted to get us all to write a bunch of pills. And the study was so strongly pro-eliminating carbohydrates that they tried to bury it, and people had to sue them to get it to come out. You hear people who say, oh, I'm checking my sugar 6 times a day, and I go, I agree with this article. Intensive sugar control means you're not doing what you're supposed to do. If you need to do that much checking your sugar, you're not getting rid of diabetes, okay? This is just interesting. An adjustable gastric band for weight loss is the management of diabetes. And they're just saying, if you've got people who are 350 pounds and going to lose their legs, get that weight off. My problem with that is once you put a band on my stomach, I have a real hard time eating lettuce and meat. The best thing that goes through that band is chocolate milkshakes. I don't think that's going to work. Drugs. I'm not even going to talk about drugs. Okay? Not going to talk about insulin other than what it does in the body naturally. I don't plan on giving it to anybody. But this was a drug that came out about 15 years ago called Pargluva. and it made the market. Okay, and it was in post-marketing studies just starting to go on the doctor's shelves, and a guy smelled a cover-up. And I'm just going to read this one paragraph. Nielsen and two colleagues, alarmed that the only heart specialist on the FDA panel had recused himself because of a conflict of interest, independently reviewed data from 5 studies involving 2,374 patients that Bristol Myers Squibb has submitted. The analysis found that those taking the drug had more than twice the risk of death, heart attacks, and strokes, and nearly the triple risk of death from all heart problems total. And this made the market. And then finally, some smart guy said, whoa, wait a second. Could we get somebody other than the FDA and this guy on the take who had conflicts to read the data before we release it? It's the Vioxx story, right? Okay. Always want to make this point to people. If you are diabetic, do not let anybody inject you with cortisone in any form. I don't care what cortisone it is. If your doctor says it's not absorbed, he's lying to you. All cortisone is absorbed. Don't get epidurals. Don't get injectable cortisone or oral cortisone for your poison ivy. Use topicals. Do not put cortisone in your body. I had a big fight with a workers' comp patient that they wanted to do an epidural.
I was just you just got me, I'm all pins and needles here. My wife, who had gestational diabetes with at least 2 of our kids, had an epidural during delivery of our 3rd child.
No, that's epidural anesthesia.
Yes, that's different.
This is the pain management epidural with high-dose cortisone.
Okay.
Okay, different than the anesthesia epidural. The needle location determines the epidural.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
And so this patient, they were demanding before the patient had surgery that she have 1 epidural, and I said she has uncontrolled high blood pressure and marginally controlled diabetes with no meds and is doing well. And I don't want her to have it. And they said, no, you must do it. And I said, okay. I said, I'm going to do a glycohemoglobin A1C and a bunch of random blood sugars, and I'm going to do 20 blood pressures for 3 days before the procedure. The night of the procedure, she was admitted to ICU with a blood sugar of 1100 and a blood pressure of 240 over 130. And I got workers' comp to add hypertension and diabetes permanently to her claim, and they had to take over the management of all her health care because I predicted it. And they said, and they had doctors who did independent medical exams and said, oh no, an epidural won't raise your blood sugar. I can pull out articles all day long out of Google Scholar that say, of course it does. And that's why that causes osteoporosis and all of those risks, okay? We all remember this. This made the front page of the newspapers. Statins cause diabetes. This is crazy. We're giving a statin to a diabetic because their cholesterol's up. And of course, we've talked about the fact that these drugs don't work anyway. They don't do what we think they do. They raise risk factors. But in and of themselves, statins cause diabetes. So we're talking about sugar, which is naturally going to take me into talking about artificial sweeteners forever. Be prepared. Okay? So before we get there, I want to remind people that there are lots of ways to use sugar. Okay? I didn't have a picture of this, so I'm going to grab it. Okay? And I have a point for this. Okay? This is sugar in a raw. Okay? Looks like it's in a wine bottle. Okay? Yay big. Okay? This is a little bit more purified and refined. Kelly's squirtable sugar. Why would I like these products? Okay? And the answer is, if you're going to make iced tea and you just can't drink it unless it's got a little bit of sweetness in it, if you put a tablespoon of sugar in iced anything or hot drinks, you find sugar in the bottom of your coffee all the time, it's not going to dissolve. It's going to sit in the bottom and you're going to get it in that last swig. So it didn't really sweeten anything, but you still got the calories in that last closing swig. We've all experienced it, okay? If, however, you made that same tea and put 3 drops of liquid sugar, the sweetness of sugar is a logarithmic curve, not an arithmetic curve. Every time you double the amount of sugar, 4-fold the amount of sweetness, okay? And so it takes very little sugar to cause sweetness. And considering the fact that there's only 9 calories, not 9 carbs in a level teaspoon of sugar, and I'm talking about a 1/16 of that, or a half a carb, if I'm out there trying to get somebody to not do carbs, honestly, putting a few drops of sugar in 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day is much better than artificial sweeteners.
Ah, okay.
Right? Okay? And these are all cellular toxins. I say it all the time. There are no fake foods. All fake foods that were manufactured, the body didn't manufacture the receptor. So they're receptor binders. NutraSweet is an exception to that. NutraSweet is aspartame, and the body actually makes aspartame. But when the body makes aspartame, it only makes the dextroisomer, or the right-hand version. When you make it artificially, you end up with 50% levoisomer, and it gets on the dextro receptor and won't come off, and it's 15,000 times as potent, and just causes all kinds of insulin stimulation, and we'll go there at the end of this stack of slides. And so, but otherwise, there are no artificial sweeteners that are natural, and ironically, if you really want to do one, the only safe one is saccharin. Nothing that they ever said about saccharin turned out to be true. Saccharin is the only product that the World Toxicology Society delisted. And guess who paid for the research on saccharin to show it caused cancer? The NutraSweet people. They paid for that research 5 years in advance of NutraSweet coming out, separated himself from the controversy, and then moved into the vacuum they created. That's GD Searle. I've always told people I know what the GD in Searle stands for. Artificial sweeteners cause Hashimoto's thyroiditis. How's that for cellular toxins? Artificial sweeteners stimulate insulin, cause fat cells to grow. We haven't talked about this. The diabetes is on a spectrum, just like ADD, etc. And at first, the spectrum wouldn't have a name. It would just be you're gaining weight and you're hungrier than you wish. So we could put growing obesity. And then that starts to become chronic enough that your hemoglobin A1C gets at the edge of normal or a little above. And we would call that metabolic syndrome. Okay? Metabolic syndrome means that your hemoglobin A1C is good enough that I don't have to treat you. I just need to yell at you. Okay? If you start getting that hemoglobin A1C, that normal's 5.8, and your ideal is 5.2 down to anything lower than that, and you get to 7, now we would consider you a well-controlled diabetic, or the top of metabolic syndrome. Okay? We might say you're diet-controlled diabetic if you were 13, did a diet, got down to 7. So we'd have, depending on what direction, the glycosgone would have different names. As you keep taking that up, eventually we're going to say you have diabetes, and that diabetes is of 3 types. Type 1 diabetes is my pancreas doesn't work and I need insulin, and the management of that is insulin, but first it's don't eat any carbs. Don't get your weight down. Okay. Type 2 diabetes is the classic diabetes all Americans have. I'm too fat and live on carbs. Okay. And type 3 is gestational diabetes, and the management of gestational diabetes is don't eat carbs. Okay, they're all the same disease. It's just that they're going to call you gestational diabetes if pregnancy, with all the things that happen in pregnancy, makes it happen. Big problem. One of my biggest challenges for people who I want on a low-carb diet just for weight loss, let alone metabolic syndrome, is I can't get them off pop. There are people out there who cannot physically make themselves drink water. If they don't have carbonation and syrup and sugar and flavor, they can't do it. And you talk to these people and they can't do orange juice. They don't do anything. They drink pop, and you know them. And it's the only thing they do. And they got these things in their dash and drive around with these big gulps, and they're just totally into pop. Okay. And that was my wife. When I met her, she was drinking 4 or 5 cans of Diet Right a day. I'd never seen the woman drink water. She didn't drink coffee. She didn't drink alcohol. She didn't drink orange juice. She didn't drink anything. She drank Diet Right. Okay? Well, anytime that you're not drinking water, every bit of water you're getting is already toxic. And so you detoxify with free water. You don't detoxify with water that's already toxic because you're detoxifying what you drank. So there's no opportunity to detoxify. And I explained that to my wife, and she said, I'm not seeing this happening to me. And over 20 years, she started diluting her Diet Right, and which is, I think, it was saccharin and it went to acetylsulfame, if I remember correctly. Okay. And then she started switching Diet Right over, and when she got it real dilute, and started adding Coke, real Coke, to carbonated water. And then I got her convinced that adding a little tea with no sweetener in it gave some heft to it. And that let her take, and she now will walk into Speedway and get a 32-ounce Coke and put that much Coke in the bottom and that much tea and fill it with carbonated water and ice. And she's managed to get all day down to maybe 3 ounces of Coke. I can't get further than that. We've bottomed out there. But when you look where I left, and you have to give people permission to find a place to succeed, because sometimes it just isn't there. Okay? This was a study in the Family Practice Journals about 5 years ago that salt and diet sodas were related to stroke risk. What did the author conclude? That it was the salt. Well, the Europeans have done dozens of studies showing that salt doesn't cause strokes. Okay? And so, once again, just like the last one, it's all about the fact of metabolic syndrome. They never checked the blood sugar in anybody in that whole study. Okay? This was really interesting. I want to read this before I put it up. You can type this in Google Scholar and come up and read the entire article. And they searched Medline, Embase, and Cochrane Library all the way back for randomized controlled trials on non-nutritive sweeteners and cohort studies that were prospective. Good research. Okay? They found 11,774 citations with 7 trials, 1,003 participants followed up, and a total in the end, all citations, 405,000 patients that they followed. And they came to the following conclusions. It's a big study. Okay? This is called a meta-analysis. Okay?
So a study of studies.
Oh, study of studies. Right. Well said. Consumption of non-nutritive sweeteners was associated with a modest increase in BMI, basic metabolic index, your weight. Okay? It's that thing the insurance company does, BMI. Right? Okay? And so everybody's doing diet sweeteners so that it can gain weight. There's never been a study on diet sweeteners that didn't show weight gain. Okay? And then it went on in the next paragraph to say consumption of non-nutritive sweeteners was associated with increase in weight, waist circumference, higher incidence of obesity, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular events. As Rush would say. Okay? That is a really, anybody who wants to argue about the safety of carbohydrates needs to explain that study done by traditional docs using traditional studies. Okay? If you'd like to really know, when we're plowing ground over again with this one, this book looks like it's on stevia. It's not. It's a book on all of the artificial sweeteners. It is the best scientific consumer book ever written. I send Dr. Fife patient stories all the time, and in the second edition, he's going to add all of my patient stories.
I knew you were going to bring up stevia, so I didn't bring it up earlier. But when you were talking about all artificial sweeteners, a lot of people go for stevia as they believe the natural alternative to artificial sweeteners.
Well, and If your definition of natural is that it came from the earth, well, then I would argue that mercury is going to be safe. It's natural, okay, etc. It had anything to do with natural. It has to. I always tell people when they say, "But it came from a plant," and I go, "Do you chew poison ivy?" I say, "How about digitalis, foxglove?" Okay, it's really poisonous. Sure, we use really small doses of it to control atrial fibrillation, but don't go too high or you die. Okay. The problem with this product is it is naturally sweet, okay, but it is another non-nutritive sweetener. That's not the problem with stevia. The problem with stevia is it's causing cancer. It's making PSAs go up rapidly. We've covered that it happened to me. That's how I found this out. It's causing vertigo. It's causing severe diarrhea. I just had a lady 2 weeks ago who sent me a new patient email, and she said, 2 years now I haven't been able to control diarrhea. And I went, 2 years, and she's been to the gastroenterologist, done all the tests, nobody can find it. And I said, before we do anything, make sure you aren't using any stevia and get off of all stevia before you come in. I need to eliminate that. And the next day she sent me an email and she said, I spent $60,000 on my diarrhea and you never saw me and cured me overnight. I feel like I ought to come in and see you just so I can have a visit. And she got in here and had other stuff. But I fixed her over the internet because she got diarrhea at the time that you could start buying stevia in 5-pound bags and it wasn't really expensive. When we went from extracted, and everybody says, oh, I'm doing organic from the plant. And I go, it doesn't make any difference, it's the same molecule. There's soda consumption. Again, these articles will just keep coming. I already did that one. Okay, let's switch over to cofactors and why you're having metabolic syndrome. Okay? If you fix your thyroid, metabolic syndrome improves. So hypothyroidism causes diabetes. Okay? Progesterone. If you take progesterone blockers, this is Provera, Depo-Provera, methyprogesterone. This is the thing gynecologists call progesterone. That's actually a progesterone blocker. Progesterone lowers sugar. Depo-Provera increases sugar, causes weight gain, causes diabetes, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis. Progesterone does the opposite. So PMS, if having no progesterone causes metabolic syndrome, then keeping your progesterone repaired is going to control it. We already covered this. Metabolic syndrome causes strokes. Metabolic syndrome causes atherosclerosis. Of course it does, because insulin is the cause of hardening of the arteries. It isn't cholesterol. It's insulin. The reason why Dean Ornish's zero-fat diet didn't work out. Everybody died from diabetes. Hormone replacement therapy, estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, reduces your risk of diabetes 35%. Risk of diabetes is lower in women who fix their hormones. Gout causes diabetes, elevated uric acid. Hyperuricemia, gout causes diabetes. These studies were 10 years apart because nobody watched the first one. Low testosterone causes diabetes. Low testosterone causes diabetes. You have a worse bone density in diabetes because you don't have your hormones that cause your osteoporosis. They missed the point. Diabetes doubles your risk of Parkinsonism because you develop angiopathy, arterial abnormalities, and inflammation in your brain. Never saw this happen from a family doc. The older you get, the more diabetes pills they put on. Try slowing them down. As you age, you make less blood sugar, just naturally. It just is true. It just is true. Caffeine aggravates insulin resistance. The people who did this study didn't ask if people were putting sugar in their coffee. Okay, so what's the simple things that we can do? And see, we're at 34 minutes. We're good. Real important in metabolic syndrome. Make sure your vitamin D is above 60 and under 90 in your lab test. If you don't know that, most important vitamin. Okay. DHEA really helps with sugar control, the precursor to testosterone, of course, and also the big immune hormone.
Is there any concern about, because since it's available over the counter, people might take it without proper dosing or something?
Right, you have to have lab, and then you have to adjust a lab.
Okay.
Right. And you don't do a DHEA level, you do a DHEA sulfate level. DHEA levels are inverted. They go up as you're lower because it's turned into sulfate, and so it builds up in your blood. Some doctors do DHEAs on patients and don't know that. Okay? And vitamin E, of course. Of course vitamin E is going to be good for diabetes. It's going to, you're trying to get rid of free radicals. That's one of the things that's happening with all these glycotoxins. Okay? We've all heard that cinnamon works. Okay? It does work. Not as much as I'd like, and most people end up needing so much of it that they end up getting heartburn. It's a big dose. 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. Whew. It's a big dose. Okay? Almost every trace mineral has been shown to help diabetes. This is another meta-analysis that resulted in a list of everything that's out there. Chromium, improving insulin sensitivity. Where's vanadium? Vanadyl sulfate improves insulin sensitivity. That's glucobalance. That's the biotics product, glucobalance, that even traditional doctors write. Magnesium is because the sugar going out of your urine is washing the magnesium out. Zinc is critical to insulin resistance. This is a reason why zinc is in the molecule insulin and why zinc insulin exists. Okay. Potassium is because you're losing sugar in your urine and pulling it out. Taurine improves detoxification. And then we covered the vitamins, glutathione, essential fatty acids, fish oils, coenzyme Q10. I don't give CoQ10 to many people. Chemotherapy victims, cardiomyopathy, cancer therapy in general, and diabetics. Okay? And then lipoic acid. Lipoic acid is stimulating, along with evening primrose oil, the rebuilding of the sphingomyelin sheath on your nerves so you don't get diabetic neuropathy. In Europe, evening primrose oil is a prescription item for diabetic neuropathy. It's covered by your insurance. And there we go. Here's a European study on evening primrose oil, which is gamma-linolenic acid, the thing that makes cell walls in your body. Every cell wall in your body is made up of gamma-linolenic acid molecules, and none of us ever take it as a supplement. Incredible stuff. You need a lot of it. Okay, so let's treat some people. Okay? When you look up at the history of the low-carb diet, we find, and this was in, I think, Grain Brain, one of those books, they go, we have seen low-carb diet all the way back to the 1500s. The King of France and the King of England used to have a, you're fat, I'll bet you I can lose fat faster than you, and they would have a competition. Okay? I think King Henry VIII put an end to that and said, I'm staying fat. Okay? And then what would happen is the people would find out that getting rid of carbohydrates worked, and the entire population would emulate it, and 50 years later a disinformation program would go back because the charlatans would want everybody sick again, and this cycle has gone on for 500 years. Okay? But we finally come to the history with the following story. There was a guy in Chicago by the name of Bill Maurer, and he was one of the first integrative physicians in the United States, very revered, and he figured out the RCD diet, which is restrictive carbohydrate diet. And when I was in practice with my partner, another revered alternative medicine doctor in the United States, spent 8 years with him, taught me a lot. He taught me about this, and I never could get people to lose weight. And once I went and practiced with him, I started being successful because I learned Bill Maurer's RCD diet. And I actually had a mimeograph copy of this thing that I then copied that was 10 years old, etc. Well, Bill Maurer died suddenly don't remember from what. And his junior partner, Dr. Atkins, went, nobody's paying any attention. I think I'll take Mauer's research and write a book. And the rest is history. We got the Atkins diet. Not an ethical man, okay? And we all in our industry call that the bacon grease diet or the Denny diet, okay? Because what he told you is, look, I don't care what quality of food you eat, just don't eat carbs, fried eggs and bacon and sausage is all fine, okay? And that resulted in the next breakthrough, which was the South Beach diet by Dr. Agustin. Apologize for the book being cut off. That's a potato chip that has no carbs in it down there called Quest, Quest, and I put it on there to remind my patients, okay? Because you got to have snacks. Pork rinds is the other one. It's a chewy, crunchy thing that doesn't have any. Got a little trans fats in it, though. That's the problem, okay? And the South Beach diet by Dr. Agustin was because he was mad that everybody was getting heart disease while they lost weight on the Atkins diet. So he said, no, you got to get rid of trans fats, okay? And so that made that diet really a reasonable diet. The only problem was he wasn't interested in weight loss. He was interested in lowering cholesterol. So he had phase 1 of the diet where you don't eat any carbs for 14 days. And when your pain goes away and your appetite drops, start putting back carbs. Well, if you do that, your cholesterol will fall because you turned off your insulin receptors, okay? But you'll stop losing weight. So I always tell my patients, figure out what you want to weigh, get on less than 30 grams of carbs a day, and when you start losing weight on day 7 to 10, some of that's water weight, your pain goes down, your brain perks up, and you feel better, just stay on that diet as long as you need to. For me, that was 14 months, 100 pounds. I used to be a very, very big guy, okay? And my knees were shot and I couldn't climb stairs, okay? I had to do something, okay? And when you tell a guy that he needs to get under 30 grams, he just goes, I'm just not going to eat carbs. I got it. Steamed vegetables, cheese, eggs, meat, oil, got it, okay? That's what I ate. And that's what I did, okay? I went to work in the ER for 24 hours with a cooler, with Tupperware tubs full of cut up vegetables and pre-cooked meat and cheese and hard-boiled eggs, and I hate hard-boiled eggs, so they were all pickled, okay? I pickled them in mustard, I picked them in Worcestershire, I pickled them with beets, anything to help hard-boiled eggs, okay? And I just lost originally half a pound a day, and then about 8 weeks out, about a third of a pound a day. You don't plateau, you just keep going down as long as you live that life. And men just go 0 carbs. Women, the minute you tell them 30 grams of carbs, they go 29.9 it is. And they're the ones that need to do the 0 because they got estrogen making them want to keep weight on. And yet they always go, no, 29.9, and they come back and tell me, it's not working. And we go through the math and I go, you're at about 80 carbs, et cetera. And, let's get real. And then you eventually get there, okay? Since then, we've had thousands of low-carb books. Mark Hyman's book was a nice book, and there are a bunch of them out there. But I tell people that I only give people 3 things: South Beach diet, and the carb book, and something on trans fats, because you cannot read labels. All USDA labels are bought and paid for by the food industry. Paul Newman got caught years and years ago misreporting the carbs in this spaghetti sauce and had to pay a fine. I don't know why they picked on him. Everybody does it. And I always tell people, if you believe in food labels, go down the aisle and buy yourself a bag of trans fat-free potato chips. I go, we put potatoes in boiling oil and didn't make any trans fats. How did we do that? And the answer is the potato chip people just bribed enough people at the USDA to take the normal level of trans fats so high that they pass. That's all that is, okay? Here's why. Fats, any fat, I don't care if it's good fat, bad fat, whatever it is, at 300 degrees cooks. And when it cooks, it bends. And that's a trans fat. That's an unnatural fat because there aren't any cooked fats in your blood if you're the Paleolithic man, right? You're not cooking your food, right? You're eating it raw, okay? And so we're now out there doing all these hot things to food because it makes it palatable, easy to eat, softer, nicer, good grill marks, pretty stuff.
So my smoker that runs at 250 degrees is okay?
Is okay. Right? And we're going to go through a list of how you live through this nightmare, okay? Because it's a nightmare, okay? And so you can't bake except at 250. You can't broil at all. You can't grill at all, and you can't fry at all. Okay? All of the meat that I eat in my life is cooked on low in a crock pot. Everything that I eat is cooked in a crock pot. Hard-boiled eggs. Poached is okay. I hate poached eggs, so that's out. I don't even like hard-boiled eggs, so that's hard work for me. Okay? I do cheat. Okay? I do use a Foreman grill to make fish, but fish doesn't have much fat and it's flesh on the outside, and you're kind of steaming fish when you do that, okay? But really, technically, if you put fish in a crock pot, you better want fish sandwiches, okay? It's not going to work, okay? Same thing's true of chicken. Now, if you go over to Costco or Meijer's or wherever you want to go to those broiler chickens and check the temperature on those things, they're just in there at 290. And they're doing that convection thing, and then don't eat skin. And they're kind of steamed. And so my wife and I have one of those chickens in our refrigerator all the time. It's probably my largest source of protein. But I make a lot of Italian sausage and brats and put them in a great big oval cooker. It holds 5 packages of 5, okay? And about 3 hours in, I'm pouring off all the fat, taking them all out on a platter. I've learned how to do this, and I'm putting the ones that are cooking in the bottom on top and putting the ones that aren't cooking in the top on the bottom. Usually one rotation if you get good at it. They all come out kind of even. Making meatloaf, okay? Making whole pork roast, making beef roast. All of them are coming out real tender because they're slow cooked, right? And the whole time, a couple times during that cooking, I'm pouring all that water off, okay? I don't want all the water off because I want steam under the lid. If the pot goes dry, temperature goes up from 212. Water in the bottom prevents it from going above 212, physics, right? Okay? And then whatever that product is that I just bulked out, I'm going to drain everything off while it's hot, let it come up to room temperature on my countertop, put it into the refrigerator, chill it, and the next night when I get home from work, I'm taking out 2 brats, rolling them up in wax paper, taking masking tape, closing them off, and then I can get about 4 of those sideways down in my newspaper orange bag and put bricks of them into the freezer. And then I'm reheating them, not by getting out frozen and nuking them, okay? I'm putting them out in the morning when I leave for work, and by the time I get to lunch, they're 72 degrees, and now I only have to nuke them up to warm, not hot, to eliminate putting free radicals into my food, but don't like microwave, but some places at work you don't have any choices, right? My wife will be happy to make vegetable soup for supper, okay? There's no food in vegetable soup, in my opinion, okay? But I take a couple brats and cut them up and take my half of the soup. She takes her half away, and I throw a couple brats in, let it sit there for a while, and I go, now it's soup. I also add a whole bunch of spices and oil, etc. Okay. One of the problems with this diet has the benefit that it has no caloric restriction. I probably was eating 3,500 calories a day on this diet, okay, and was losing weight. And you'll get people who will lose weight on this diet when your purpose was to lower their cholesterol, and I have those people adding oils to everything and throwing their calories higher. But there are people who can get pretty thin on this diet if you're doing it for cholesterol. My cholesterol plummeted on this diet. The minute I got to 169 pounds, what I weighed in college, started putting carbs back, 30 grams a month, okay? Today, I maintain my weight at 120 to 140 grams of carbs a day. Honestly, I don't consider myself on a diet anymore. 140 grams of carbs a day is all the carbs I would possibly want to eat. A lot of times I don't even make that, and don't try. If I watch my weight goes up, it's because I was bad, and I get rid of all my carbs for 3 days, turn off my insulin, go back to my 120 grams. So if you need to know what carbs you have, and the USDA is going to lie to you, you need a reference. Bellerson did all the foods over again for you in a 600-page reference, not meant to be read, meant to be taken to the grocery store.
See, that's the thing. When we go grocery shopping, we're looking for some of the reasons you've just talked about, looking at trying to avoid carbs or especially sugars added. And we look and there's sugar right on the ingredient list, and then it says sugar 0.
Right.
On the
and that's because it's got stevia in it, or NutraSweet.
Or it says the ingredient says sugar.
Right.
But the breakdown says sugar 0, so that's back to that rounding.
There you go. Exactly. There are 4 packs of sugar in Dannon yogurt. Huh? I mean, you're done. One Dannon yogurt, you're over 30 grams. One pop, you're over 30 grams. One slice of bread, you're over 30 grams. You know, it's awful. And then the last thing is, I'm not recommending this book. I just want to make the point. Read something on trans fats. Okay? They teach you how to make food. And the other one you talked about, smoking. Okay? Great stuff, you know. And you got a little bit of carcinogen issue on the surface of smoking things. Okay? And if you learn to smoke well and have a good quality smoker, that's lower than when you're smoking poorly. Okay? And so I just tell my patients, I say, you're diabetic, and if you want to get off the meds, you want to get off the insulin. I just saw Greg Thursday. 10 years ago, Greg weighed 260 pounds and was on 70 units of insulin a day and 3 pills. 3 different meds, like 10 pills a day, for his diabetes. And his hemoglobin A1C was still like 8.5, and he was panicking, and he was developing diabetic complications. And I saw Greg this week, and he is no longer diabetic. He weighs 165 pounds, and he's on no meds, and he's not diabetic. Because he did what I said. And I have lots of those people. And so the problem is, you're on all these pills to lower your blood sugar, okay? And now you're going to quit feeding the pills and insulin. So you've got to be doing a lot of sugars, especially out there when you start hitting day 7, 8, and 9. All of a sudden, your sugars start falling. You've got to be dropping insulin and then dropping pills, and you get hypoglycemia because you didn't move fast enough. And I go, you need to stay a little high. Don't let yourself stay a little low. We're going to make you not diabetic anyway, so let your sugar go up, and that way you don't get hypoglycemia. And just keep getting rid of those pills as you can. Every time your sugars get better, drop another pill. Okay? The problem is the doctor's writing your pills, doesn't want you to do that. He doesn't believe this can be done, in spite of my doing it every week. Diabetes. It's a social disease.
You talked about people feeling better on the second week of eliminating carbs from their diet, but it's not such a happy primrose path when you try to cut carbs out of your diet. You mentioned ladies typically have a harder time than guys.
Right.
But it's tough on everybody.
Oh, it's tough on everybody, and you constipate. You know, you're sitting there eating nothing but carbs, so your pancreas is only making amylase, and all of a sudden you start sending it foods that need protease and lipase. And I tell everybody, you need to be on digestive enzymes at the initiation of this diet, okay? And maybe you need stool softeners. Your bowel is going through big changes. It's going, whoa, what happened down here, you know? And, of course, meats are much more constipating than carbohydrates, which don't leave anything behind anyway, you know? And you got to get your fiber up. You know, you're going to do that if you're eating a lot of leafy green vegetables and etc. But yeah, you know, it's not pretty. When you've worked yourself into that diabetic corner, coming out of it's not pretty. But the good news is that right away you start feeling the fact that your sugars are coming down, and you see that evidence, and your blood pressure is dropping, and you're getting to lower your blood pressure medicine, and your weight's coming down, and your strength's going up, and your brain's working better, and you know, and you go, I can do this. And I go, yeah, well, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. This never stops. It never stops. I'm never coming off this diet. I may be tolerating more carbs today because I'm in control and I haven't got my insulin receptors sensitized. Is you put more and more insulin on insulin receptors, you get insulin resistance. And it takes more insulin to get that insulin receptor to work and pump that sugar.
It's good business.
And it's good business. And those insulin receptors don't desensitize until about 8 to 12 weeks out.
Whoa.
Yeah, they're not with your insulin falls, and that's when you start losing weight. But you really are prone to wanting to have hypoglycemia for the next 12 weeks because your insulin receptors are going, am I on? Am I off? Where's my insulin? You know, it's unstable. And that's the reason why I tell people stay a little sweet and just be happy with the fact that you're losing weight, losing pills, losing blood sugar, you know, and you'll get there. We need to make this disease go away, and we're only going to make this go away when doctors tell people what I'm saying. And, there must be 2 or 3 people in Northwestern Ohio who believe what I believe.
Well, we've got quite a few viewers who are going to try to share this with as many people as they can to get the word out. So we've been talking with Dr. Jay Nielsen MD, family practice doc in Northwestern Ohio, about diabetes and all of the ways that you can eliminate it by eliminating carbs until your body adjusts. So thank you, Dr. Nielsen, for joining us here again on HealingYourself.Life.
Pleasure.
Hey, Reluctant Preppers, you could have been watching this video the moment it came out.
By going to HealingYourself.Life and subscribing to our new sister channel, Healing Yourself. See you there.
Does your family ever get exasperated with you for stockpiling such things as paper towels, bottled water, or toilet tissue? Well, they certainly can't object to you stockpiling money. Silver, the only money recognized by the U.S. Constitution. And your first 10-ounce bar of pure silver can be had at spot price with no premium by going to sdbullion.com/RP. And when you buy it that way, you'll be supporting Reluctant Preppers as well by going to sdbullion.com/RP. Thanks.